Hi, it's Jeff Cohen and Adam Lusthaus from the Florida Healthcare Law Firm. I'm very happy about this interview because Adam's got a very cool background that we've been looking for a long time. Tax lawyer, estate and trust specialty, M&A specialist, asset protection specialist. We've always been kind of handling those pieces by outsourcing it, and now we don't have to, and now you get it all done in one place. So I'm really excited about this. You know, one of the things that I'm excited about is the comprehensive way that you look at businesses. A lot of lawyers function on the basis of answering questions.
Right.
Like they get a question and they just answer it. But one of the things I like about your background the most is how comprehensive you look at businesses. Like you look at not just the corporate and tax structure, but you also look at, well, are the assets of the business in a situation where they can be protected?
Right.
What about the estate and trust needs of the founders?
Right.
We looked at a situation the other day, we were telling you about it, how this company is structured as a C Corp and the individuals are shareholders. So nobody has any asset protection. Nobody has any estate and trust needs. And you and I know from dealing with businesses for so many years that the foundational issues always come first, but they often get ignored.
Right.
Doesn't that make you nuts?
Every single time. However, I come from, my father is a small business owner, and I think a lot of what's been instilled in me is the unique challenges and items that face that are pretty ubiquitous, whatever business you're in.
Yeah.
Whether you're in painting, contracting, supply like my father, or if you're a clinician in the medical space.
Right.
But fundamentally, somebody goes out into business, with a lot of excitement, sometimes trepidation, and these are the items that are often overlooked because there's so many things on your plate when you're starting a business.
You know what? They're also fragmented. I think that's one of the problems that's happened, not just in law, but in medicine, is that everybody gets so subspecialized that nobody has the comprehensive background like you do to be able to look at things in a comprehensive way. Like they'll look at a tax issue, but they completely miss asset protection. They completely miss estate and trust, and they don't build businesses for the seller.
Right.
But but I love that you bring all of that perspective to the table.
I like to think, and maybe it's an oversimplification, I like to think that just like many doctors have a holistic process. They're not just treating the symptoms or one acute issue, they're trying to treat the patient as a whole.
Yep.
I like to think that in some way, not liking myself to a doctor in any way like that, a physician, but I like to think about when I look at a business, I look at that too.
You do the whole systems examination, which is very cool because in medicine and law and in other things, what happens is you see things through a lens.
Right.
So a tax lawyer will look at things from the perspective of, well, I just want to make sure that the tax issues are being handled for a specific thing. For example, in a transaction, they're going to look at the tax issues and optimize the outcome for the buyer.
Right.
But they never look at anything beyond that. And then the client is left to wonder, well, should I find asset protection? Should I go talk to an estate and trust lawyer? Right. And so the clients, unfortunately, are really exposed, and they're underrepresented, they're underprotected, and that's a big problem for me, and it really irritates the hell out of me.
But I think partially due to the fragmented nature of it, and also just it's really hard. It's an all day, every day, 24/7, 365 to run your own business.
Yep.
So even if they did go and have the time and energy to speak to one professional, it's another whole to-do to then go and find the other professional. Take time out of there.
You know what? I mean, and then if we flip it and it's like it's on us to figure out what medical professionals we need.
Right.
It's like we're not really capable of doing that. Like, are you going to know, hey, I should probably get a invasive cardiologist to do that, or I should probably talk to a hematologist oncologist. We're not really qualified to self-diagnose, and neither is a physician or a healthcare business owner. That's not their skill set. It shouldn't be their responsibility. It should be our responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to cultivate, I've tried throughout my career to try to cultivate a relationship with my clients that's more than just transactional.
Yep.
And more of an advisory role.
Right. So you're not going to just like get an email or have a conversation, answer a question, say, I'm done, that's it.
Hey, I need this contract. I need this operating agreement.
Right.
I'm taking on these partners. I need this draft. I need this prepared. What's the discrete answer to this? You've been doing this even longer than I have. Usually you can't answer.
What are you trying to say? Like
you can't,
old or something?
No, you're just a little bit. But no, you can't answer without going and looking at why they're asking the question.
Can't help it. But, there's two things that I noticed that are really rare of people, and I think part of it is how time impacts us, like we're rushing. The two things are, number one, care enough to be curious and ask more questions.
Right.
And the second thing is really think about things that the person on the other end of the call or in your meeting isn't really qualified to bring. Like, give it all you got. Put it all on the table so you can really make the best of it.
Right.
And that's kind of next level, in my opinion, caring or customer service.
It's providing value.
Yeah.
And creating value.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things left on the table in our haste to answer a question, or there's a discrete need, or some regulatory organization is knocking on the door, or it's April 14th and the taxes are due, and there's a lot of racing because busy lives and running a business of any sort is taxing and all time consuming, as everybody knows. So how can we provide value as lawyers, as business advisors to our clients, so that it becomes second nature and they feel comfortable opening and sharing, and it becomes this cycle of value creation.
Exactly. Well, I think you said it earlier. It's really the difference between a relationship and a transaction.
Right.
Yeah. And those are the most fulfilling relationships. I mean, for 38 years, that's what I've had. Right. Is and I represent not just business owners, but then their kids who become either part of the business or they have their own businesses. Right. And you just have these kind of generational clients that are people that we care very much about.
Right. How do you protect and service them outside of the business?
Yeah.
They're all interrelated.
Yep.
How do you make sure to create a legacy? How do you protect the business, the assets, the people for generations to come?
There was a time in the 90s when practices realized their biggest asset is their receivables because they have to bill and collect.
Right.
As opposed to in the wellness space, there are no receivables because they get paid at the time of service. But most healthcare businesses don't operate in the wellness space. Their biggest asset is what? Their couches, their chairs, their tables? It's their receivables. Right. So they would go, how do I protect my biggest asset, my receivable, which is, trailing receivables are 45 to 60 days. And it could be millions and millions of dollars that's exposed to somebody that slips and falls in their lobby or that thinks that their leg fell off because of them or whatever the thing is. But businesses are running around with massive asset exposure and they're not even aware of it.
Right. And it might even be under their nose. It could be another partner that due to lack of proper, partnership agreements or, it's funny, but you spend more time sometimes with your business partner than you do with your own romantic partner.
Right.
And you might have a prenup or something post-nup in your marriage, but a lot of people don't really think about that in business and have the right business marriage agreement.
And I think a lot of us just spend so much time working in our business, we don't take the time to work on it.
Right.
We were talking the other day about a wonderful guy with a terrific business, multi-million-dollar business, and he's got layers of corporations and entities. He has no ownership document, no shareholder agreement, no operating agreement at all. And that happens more than people realize because you just get so excited to produce and deliver that you run after it and you don't work on the protection base layer issues.
Right. And those things, they're not issues until they are. You don't want to wait for them to become issues.
Right.
You're at the precipice, you have a tax return due. Why are my taxes so high? Why am I, or you're about to sell. I'm like, what? I can't sell because my documents were a mess. Or one of my partners doesn't want to sell for this valuation. Or I can't do anything about it.
Or you have to do a restructure as part of the sale, and now the buyer gets squeaky and runs off. We've seen that plenty.
Yeah. So, the time is always now. Like finding the time.
Yeah.
And getting to the conversation, getting to the why.
One of the weirdest stories in my career was the fellow that I got to be friendly with, a very successful physician. And he said, I have $6 million in my checking account. Should I be doing something with that? It's a true story. And I remember, I'm not an asset protection lawyer. You are. And I thought, oh, my God, dude, you really need help.
Right.
You need help now, because that's massive exposure.
Right.
And it was all in his name. It was a personal checking account. So I was like, so immediately got him to an asset protection lawyer.
Right.
Yeah. But that lit me up, that there are so many people in business who are really smart and very, very successful, and they're just not even asking that question.
Right, and that's, again, getting with the client and cultivating that relationship where they don't even have to ask the question, where you're kind of asking and answering for you. And in asset protection, as in a lot of things, there's a lot of things you can do now, today, after a brief conversation with a lawyer, that doesn't even necessarily legal related. There's so many different steps you can take towards that. Certainly there's more sophisticated, intricate plans, and for the right circumstances, they might justify it. But there's so many little things that can make a big impact that they can do just after a conversation with us in the afternoon.
Impact. Tell me about one of the most satisfying or fulfilling impacts that you've had. Might be a minor interaction with massive outcome, and it really helps somebody, it really changed their life. Can you think of one or two of those things that pop up in your mind in a way that preserves attorney-client privilege?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Of course. There's some real big examples where I've, helped a client from inception to exit. Yeah. And then there's some of these micro examples, kind of like you're talking about. I mean, and sometimes they can be equally fulfilling in their own way. I had a similar situation to what you were talking about, where you had one client who had a lot of money just sitting unprotected, and they weren't in the medical space, but anybody in business for themselves is a target for liability, for lawsuits.
Right.
I just by creating a basic trust for the benefit of their kids, at the right time, fast forward a couple years down the road, checking in with the client, figuring out, he's in this legal battle with a former partner, in part due to some documents that should have been created that weren't created properly, but knowing that there was a good, safety net for his children put away, inaccessible to lawsuits, to other, creditors, just made me feel really good. It's like, you read about it, it's the right thing to do, but actually implementing it and seeing a real world example of it helping preserve a family and making sure for generations to come the family was set was very rewarding.
Yeah, that's cool.
Process.
That's a cool impact. And the people that weren't in the room raising the issue, you end up helping the people that aren't in the room that the guy
there's
really
the ancillary, or third party type beneficiaries to that.
That's
for
cool.
Sure. So it's kind of like a ripple effect of positivity.
Let's talk for a minute about the environment that we're currently in and how it might be changing. There's a lot of talk about increased tax exposure and new taxes and tax being raised and tax capital gains changes and stuff like that. All of it is bad news for people that make a lot of money or that have a lot of assets. Do you have the same impression that I do, that the need for these kinds of things that you do is just increasing over time, and it's just going to get more and more important to do it? Because that's what it seems to me when I look at these changes that are being proposed.
Yeah, I think that, at some point, all different, phases and cycles have to come to an end. We've been in the economy has been in a very big growth cycle with record low taxes, historically low interest rates, and historically low regulation oversight. And that's created an enormous period of record growth. But we've also increased our deficit. At some point, you have to pay the piper. At some point, there has to be increased taxes somewhere. So there has to be a reckoning at some point, and when it comes is a little bit hard to predict, but it's getting closer and closer every passing year. And I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of steps people can do now in anticipation of these. If you wait for these things to happen, it's often too late to achieve maximum impact to protect against them. If you do things now, you can have, a exponential impact on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, timing is it's really getting my attention in the news when
Right.
they're talking about these tax changes. I'm going, you can't just sit and hope things are going to get better that way.
Right. I mean, it's going to impact. It's going to impact everything, the flow of business.
Yeah.
I think that it's important now to take stock of what you have, what you want to protect, and take chances now. I think, the income tax, the capital gains you mentioned, there's a good chance that the state tax and gift tax is going to go back down to where it was just a few years ago as well. And, that's going to put into play a lot more people. A lot more people are going to have exposure and have more considerations like they did just a few short years ago. So now's the time to start at least looking into some of these to preserve and maximize wealth, preserve, and protect it as well.
Well, it's a great time for you to join us. Thanks,
you,
man.
Jeff.
Appreciate it.
Excited to be here.
Yeah.